Fun, is that correct? Yes. Okay.
Cora Henny van Wyk from the Cora Kultuis tribe of the Western Cape, the Korana Council. You know, before I want to ask my question, I just want to relay what Steve Biko said in 1977 before his death. He said, the most lethal weapon of the oppressor is the minds of the oppressed. And in the Western Cape, we have got that problem. Many people are free in body, but not in mind. The indigenous people, the Khoikhoi and the Bushman Nation, have made several attempts to engage the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs and other relevant departments to enter into a meaningful negotiations like a mini CODESA. Our identity is still at stake. Cultural genocide that has been committed, the human rights that are blatantly violated even today. The state thus far has played a very divisive role by engaging people who have no right, like the National Khoisan Council, who are merely puppets and playing to the tune of the puppet master. This is being done on national level and international level. Now my question is this: how could this government deliver any progress reports to the United Nations Permanent Forum without being engaged with legitimate customary structures? Is the state serious about human rights for all? What is the relevance of both the major political parties in this province when they are failing to work together in order to save the lives of the indigenous people in all indigenous communities who are being killed on a daily basis? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed for your very short question. All right, yes, Minister.
Just the issue of, at the international front, at the United Nations, the South African government as well, we all know that there's respect, and it's even in the regulatory framework of South Africa, the recognition. So that's not a issue. The issue is, how do the Khoisan community, Wamheni, Chief Henny, how do you unite so that you, in fact, speak in one voice? That's the debate. The South African government at a national level is there. There is a Khoisan, there is the national structure, which Wamheni refers to as a structure that is really just a rubber stamp. Now, it's not the government that elected that structure. It's the representatives of the Khoisan community in South Africa. And therefore, if there's an issue, it's important that that issue internally amongst yourself needs to be addressed. And that is a very, very important issue, because we must speak to everyone. The bigger reality is, in this year's State of the Nation address, Chief Henny, we do know that the President, in fact, on the back of the national conference in Mangaung, last year, the President instructed that the issue around land redistribution and doing justice to an injustice in terms of the 1913, that must be corrected, and therefore there is a reopening of the land claims issues preceding 1913 to accommodate the Khoisan community. Secondly, 2 years ago, on the 6th of August in 2011, there was a meeting in the Western Cape, also of the Khoi community, and letters were written to the President, to national ministers, to the Premier, to the Mayor. It's only the President and national ministers that has arrived. At that meeting, the Premier has written to the Khoi community and said that at that point of time, don't recognize the Khoi community in the Western Cape. So yes, the battle is on, but let's not direct it at times in a way as if the South African government is not behind that. The key thing is we have to make sure there's unity amongst your own constituency, and the government should not decide who your leadership are. You have to help us to decide who that are.
Okay. All right, let's go to table number 2. I think it's Songezo Jongile. Table number 2. There we go, behind you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. As the youth, or former youth of South Africa, we remain inspired by the role played by the United Democratic Front in carrying forward a critical pillar of struggle, which was a pillar of mass mobilization. My only question or issue is that apartheid, UDF actually's theme or slogan was that apartheid divides, UDF unites. And unfortunately, standing here 20 years into our democracy, I cannot say proudly that I live in a province that is uniting all people irrespective of race. What I see is a government that continues to want to divide people along being colored or black, using poor people to fight for crumbs, whilst the real meat is still being shared along the same lines as they did under apartheid. That the inequalities in our province are still very much defined along racial lines. The critical issue that is being raised about land, about housing, and the desperate action that our people begin to take actually takes us back in terms of the rights that were fought for. From where we stand, particularly because we think we're the future as the young generation, we continue being disappointed that whoever that political party is that is in power, it is failing to really unite the people of the Western Cape. So we all act in unionism in addressing these very critical issues that have been raised here of housing, of safety, issues of health, and more importantly, issues of unemployment. So as we stand here really honoring that history of UDF, equally we're disappointed that we live in an unliberated zone. I thank you.
Okay. Minister, I don't know if you want to address that.
Thank you very much for that comment. One of the things certainly that I think we should get right in the Western Cape to address the problem that he is raising is that agreement that was made in 1994 that said that many of our people did not have land, many of our people did not have houses, and many could not afford and have ownership of that. And one of the things that must be done in this province is to adhere to that agreement that we've had, and by making sure that the majority of people who then acquired houses at that time must take ownership of those houses. And that will bring dignity, respect back to very many people. Dr. Molefe referred to it also earlier on. And as we do that, we address the question of the land dispossession. The reason why we launched the UDF in Mitchell's Plain was to give recognition to the fact that here thousands of our people were brought onto this part of the Western Cape. Hide you away, don't make a noise there, stay behind the sand dunes, and that's where you belong. And unless we change those decisions that were taken by making sure that we house people in areas, get them back to District 6, make sure that they're closer to the cities, make sure that they have access to very many different economic activities. That's the kind of things that we ought to change. We do not have to have a situation that when responsibility needs to be taken to govern, that's escalated to national all the time. Now ask national, they know what to do. If people don't have proper sanitation, now ask national why they do not sort it out. If gangsters are ruling as they are and the children of Mannenberg can't even go to school, now ask the army to come in, instead of taking the responsibility of making sure that people are secured and making sure that people require that which they have asked for and why they came together in 1983 when we had the United Democratic Front. And I think the people in the Western Cape, they require that. The people in the Western Cape are, they should own those decisions that have been taken. And the people of the Western Cape, I must say, are the only ones that will be able to bring about that change themselves instead of wanting to live under a situation which is close to what we had in 1994.
Okay, let's go to table 15. Milian Buersen, I think, has got a related question to that. Table 15, Milian Buersen.
Hi, good morning to the panel. It's Malene Boyson.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. I am from the Mitchell's Plain Housing Association. This question is directed to the Minister. I want to know, how will you solve the backlog of the housing and also the RDP houses that needs to be restructured? Okay, we also have a lot of violence and crime and shooting in our areas. Tafelsig, Beacon Valley, we have a march coming from there today, but we need to run to schools as well every day to get our children. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, the question that she's raising about the housing issues in Mitchell's Plain, not too long ago, I was given the opportunity to meet some of the leadership of the Housing Forum. We have agreed that one of the things that we need to do is to make sure that the entity in the department that deals with ensuring that we have quality houses must come here into Mitchell's Plain and come and see why do we have houses whose foundation stands on the one side and the rest of the house is standing on the other side. Why do we have a roof looking in the way that it does? And so there is a commitment from the department to come and have a look at it. We've also agreed with them that we will have what they call the little housing conference that they will bring together here. And so therefore that commitment has been made to your leadership to do that. And very soon we will also have a bigger conference where we bring together the majority of you in preparation for the UN Habitat Conference that we're going to have. And so we will continue to welcome those problems that they have raised with us, but certainly to rectify them. We do have, Peter, in the department, a program that deals with rectification. And that rectification is about making sure that where houses have not been built in a proper manner, that we should do that. But our plea is that it is the responsibility of municipalities to make sure that what they do from the start must be a qualitative product, so that we don't have to come back all the time. And it does look here in Mitchell's Plain, there's a case to be made that we now have to come back again and fix those houses that have been built, that our people are living in such miserable conditions.
All right. Just to remind you that we also have Jessie Duarte in our studio in Johannesburg, so if there's a question for her that you'd like to pose, please don't forget that we have her there, and hopefully we'll get something from her very shortly. But I just wanted to remind you actually that whilst all of these issues are here and they're current and we must address them, there is a very significant reason why we're here, and that was that 30 years ago the UDF was formed. And today's a very special day for us to remember that day. And I would like, actually, and I know that you perhaps are going to be surprised that I know that you're here, Leila Esel. Leila, I know that you were here in this room back then, and that you were only 8 years old at the time. Tell us a little bit why
Good morning. Hello.
I know the story, but tell our viewers why you at 8 years old had to speak on behalf of your father, Johnny Esel.
because he told me I must. There was no defying Johnny Issel. If he told you had to talk, you had to talk, even with a stutter. Well, that's why I spoke. I think I spoke because he was banned and he was not able to speak on that day. And of course, the nationalist government used all these tactics, maybe to debilitate the organization. So if it meant that they would have to make Trevor run late or maybe imprison Johnny or get Chris to not pitch up or whatever, so there is nobody to entice the masses and not get the masses to get all crazy and excited and think they're going to free Africa. So I think maybe such things.
Can you remember what you said? What was the message your dad had that day that he asked you to share?
I said,
it's a long time ago.
my daddy is not here today because he has been banned.
Right.
Something like that.
Okay. What do you remember yourself of that day? You're a little girl and there's all this activity and all this drama playing out, but did you get a sense that something amazing was happening?
I think if I remember correctly, it was very full.
Yeah.
It was very, very full. There weren't just people hanging on those bars.
Yeah.
They were practically almost sitting under the stage. That's how full it was. Because I think in the last few years, I've seen lots of maybe videos and photographs, and there were people sitting on top of people, on top of people, and on top of people, and there were people outside, and so it was extremely full. There were lots of people, and everybody wanted to be inside.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us and remembering that day. Because children were very much part of the struggle in one way or another. Perhaps we can go to Johannesburg. Jessie Duarte, if you can hear me. Sorry?
Yes, I can.
I have a
you
question.
have a question as well. Oh my goodness. Okay, all right. So
I didn't stand up to be Laila Issel. I stood up for a question.
yes, okay.
I apologize. The United Democratic Front was very against the gut education in the 80s. It was a very big problem for my father. In fact, he wanted to homeschool me because he did not like the education. But today in my country, the education is worse. What we have at the college schools is disgusting. Our children are given a foundation which does not straighten their spatial brains. Our children are given mathematics literacy. They are told that they cannot do pure maths. But in Limpopo, children are doing pure maths. In Cape Town, my daughter cannot study to be an actuarial scientist if she goes to Helen Ziller's school because she must do maths literacy. I am the daughter of Johnny Issel, but my child today is studying maths literacy. I do not understand. It is so in my community because there are young students who want to be doctors. They cannot because our education system is not respectable. On one of these very famous talk shows about a month ago, they were discussing that we are not generating enough clever people. So we do not have them, so we import them from Germany. We bring them from London, because Cape Town has nothing. But Cape Town has nothing because of what we teach our children.
All right.
Why are we teaching them this? I know I'm speaking to a party who is not in control in Cape Town. But then, please, can we sort it out? Because that means the grandchild of Johnny Issel must do what?
Okay. Well, luckily... And Deputy Minister Sethi, I know that you knew I was coming to you. You've been challenged. Let's get the microphone to you. Maybe you can. And this is a cry of a mom here, but I think this is a cry of a lot of moms. And you need to give them some assurance. There's a microphone for you. If I could just ask you to stand so that the nation can see you. And we have you on record.
Well, thank you very much. I'm Enver Surti, the Deputy Minister for Basic Education. And I certainly share your concern. The position with regard to mathematics and mathematical literacy is as follows. Every learner in our country has to become literate and numerate. That's the policy position. There was a time in the past where children could go to school without doing mathematics. In other words, they would sit for the matric examination without having to do mathematics. And the position was that these occupations, in other words, actuarial sciences that you spoke about, engineering, etc., were set aside exclusively for the white population. And therefore, they regarded mathematics as being irrelevant for the future of our children. The decision that we had taken is that every child should be numerate. That's the first decision. The second is that we should promote mathematics and science, given the realities and the disparities of the past, and it's important for us to reinforce that. And in order to ensure that numeracy takes place, we said that there would be a choice. Learners could take either mathematics or mathematical literacy, so that every child that goes through the system is at least numerate. The position with regard to that choice was that, by and large, 50% of the learner population took mathematics, and about 50% took mathematical literacy. In other words, those who wanted to become lawyers, for example, did not do mathematics, but those who wanted to become engineers and actuaries did mathematics, whereas the others did mathematical literacy. And the universities recognized that there would be parity between the two. However, there has been a perversion. The perversion has been this, that in certain instances, certain districts, certain provinces, because of trying to be in the ascendancy in terms of performance, whereas learners should be encouraged to do mathematics rather than mathematical literacy, because we require more engineers, more actuarial scientists, more project managers, people with those mathematical skills. They were discouraged from doing so in order to achieve better results, so that we could say we have a better pass rate than other provinces. Now, that may be the perversion that is occurring. So schools would rather discourage learners from doing mathematics because they regarded mathematics as slightly more difficult than mathematical literacy, in order to achieve better overall results, where you can then celebrate the achievement of a particular district, a particular school, in the context of the pass rate. Now, that's a perversion and a distortion of what we seek to achieve. If indeed it is occurring in a particular school as a result of that perverse outcome that is being sought, please bring it to our attention. I cannot certainly say that it is a policy of the Western Cape Department of Education. That would be incorrect for me to do so. But if that perversion is occurring as a result of a pressure that is being asserted on the schools or the districts to perform in a particular way, you must recognize that in the context of education itself, there's an interesting competition that is taking place. There was an expectation that Western Cape, for example, would be first. Gauteng beat them last year. So there is this play between the provinces to say, well, we'll be able to produce the best results. Now, one way of doing so is really to say, rather than promoting mathematics, you promote mathematical literacy, which is deemed to be easier. So it's unfortunate, but it's certainly not the intention of policy. And I cannot say, as I'm standing up here, that that would be the position with regard to the approach of the Department of Western Education, but it may occur in the context of a particular school where a principal would want to achieve better results. But you are more than welcome to engage with us, and we would make the appropriate intervention. Thank you very much for that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. All right, I want to go back to Johannesburg, because Jesse Duarte is there, and I want to reminisce a little bit, because it was a significant time in the history of this country. And Jesse Duarte, if you can hear me, I'm just wanting to know, at that time, did you get a sense as you were gathering forces that the UDF was going to become what it became? Or did it surprise you when it did gather momentum and became the movement that it became, just how powerful it became and how significant it became in terms of helping dismantle apartheid?
Peter, please remember that we were young activists, so we were full of exuberance. and there was never a thought that we would not succeed. So we had rolling mass action towards an eventual success. There were many, many challenges, I have to tell you that. Many times when the violence erupted in particular areas like in KwaZulu-Natal, one felt a little bit disheartened, but structures on the ground managed to reunite and work forward and still deal with issues of people. And I think that what mobilized people into the UDF was this element of dealing with the issues in a particular community in a very specific way. So we had advice centers throughout the country which were very effective, where people could come and explain their problems. And I must just say that Leila's input now really touched me quite a little bit. I must admit that as a parent myself, as a grandparent myself, a critical worry is that some principal in some school has the right to take a decision that will deny my child a future. And I'm very happy that the Deputy Minister of Education is in the audience. Hopefully we'll take it forward. One of the things that was wonderful about the UDF, and I was just saying to Sam, when you walked into Rocklands that day, you had the entire demography of South Africa in one room. For me, for the first time in my young life, I was able to be in the same room with people from every race group in the country, every class, and gender, because I was an activist that represented the gender community, the women's movement, Federation of Transvaal Women. So for me, it was a wonderful moment of unity. I didn't even think about the future at that moment. I just thought about how great it was that we could, as South Africans, walk into one room, have one vision, have Francis Bart standing up there and calling out the ancestors, have Helen Joseph speaking about the Federation of South African Women and JODAC and white Democrats in the country, have Alan Busak speaking, have the Natal Indian Congress comrades speaking about what's happening in Natal, have people from Limpopo speaking, and it was representative of how the country needed to go forward, and it gave a lot of encouragement to the young people. Our leaders, Popo Molefe was one of my leaders at the time. I must say that we were a handful, but we were disciplined. And I think that it's very hard. I was saying to Sam, the thing that amazed me that day was not so much the big picture issues. I got off the bus, very tired. Our bus had been stopped on the way by the police and so on. And there we were marshaled to a place where we could have tea with hot milk. and that amazed me completely, the level and the depth of organization, the caring, the specificity of caring about how people would feel when they got off a bus that had been traveling for almost 2 days, you know. And inside the electricity in that room, with people, and people have said this before, hanging from the rafters, it was packed to capacity. It didn't matter that it was packed to capacity. There were people outside as well. So it was looking at the future for me in a very different way, a microcosm of the future that we were building at that time. And I think today we take for granted that we have legislatures, we have parliament, we have the demography in there, but apartheid spatial development has not yet been undone. And so there's more work to be done. And activists I'm still an activist, and so are many people I know, still believe that our task is to make sure that we do not forget about the poor. And in many provinces, and in some provinces, and I won't want to mention names, that is definitely happening, where the poor are simply marginalized to the edges of society. And whatever's left in a budget...
There's a chance to speak. But okay, Jessie, thank you so much.
Too much.
Thank you so much, Jessie, for that answer. All right, so Dr. Molefe, I'm going to ask you to answer this question because this one is from Xolani. Where are you, Xolani? You didn't put your... Yeah, I want you to ask Dr. Molefe this question because you ask for former UDF members. So stand up and ask your question. Say your surname. I couldn't read it here. Okay.
Thank you very much, Peter. I don't know about this name. They are calling me Gaddafi, but I'm not Gaddafi. Peter, I'm Xolani Sotashe. I'm the Chief Whip of the ANC in the city of Cape Town. I asked that question because Dr. Molefe...
Ask the question.
The question is, what is your feeling about this continuous racial divide in the Western Cape, in particular in the city of Cape Town? The feeling of the former UDF members
UDF, and that was the key.
about this continuous racial divide in Western Cape, in Cape Town in particular.
As a former UDF member.
That's a very difficult question. But let me, before I answer your question, say that, and this is the point I should have made. When I spoke about the symbols of resistance and the struggle for freedom, Johnny Issel in this province was one of the foremost activists. He's also come from the tradition of the Black consciousness movement, and I think he needs to continue to be honored as that important symbol of our struggle. Laila, I remember what you said in that meeting, but you can't remember. I'll send you a video of that launch. The issue of the racial divide in the city of Cape Town would obviously continue to be one of the wrongs and the injustices carried from the past that must be corrected. Firstly, I mean, the Constitution itself of this country does not allow for that. And I think it is correct that the residents of Western Cape must continue to insist that there should be integration of community to reflect the character of South Africa as it should be, as everywhere else efforts are made to make it. And one of the speakers earlier on said, this is the only province that has that doesn't have women in its government. It's amazing, and because it's the most powerful position is held by a woman. Obviously, there's something wrong there. It has to be something needs to be done to do so. But it's the responsibility of us as individuals, as organizations in the Western Cape to correct that situation. It cannot be corrected by the national government from its head office. Okay. It cannot be corrected by me. We are the makers of history here. We must change things through the hard work, through our own actions.
All right, we're running out of time, unfortunately, so I'm going to jump in there, and I just literally want to get 30 seconds each, your closing thoughts, as you reminisce as well, because I think today there are many issues about what's happening today, but let's not forget that today is also a very special day and what happened 30 years ago. So let's start with you, Minister September. Your final thoughts as we go back 30 years.
Thank you very much, Peter. Well, my final thoughts on just being very happy that I was able to be part of the organization and the movement at that time, that by the sheer fact that I could be present at the gathering in Mitchell's Plain is extraordinary and something that will never ever leave my mind. And I think very importantly, what we agreed to at that point in time in this hall of what we need to do to change this country. And now, as we sit back and we think about those things that we have said on that day and how we've been able to, in this last 20 years, bit by bit, been able to chip away of this apartheid face is quite important. And I think the important thing for people in South Africa, the recognition that we need to give to those great leaders that emerged here, that came together, and many of them that are in this room, that in their own small little way organized the bus, they organized the taxi, they organized the street, they organized the little village, they spoke to their neighbor, they walked here to Mitchell's Plain, they came over the bridge.
You've
that
taken
is
up
important.
everybody's time, by the way.
That is important that we must recognize here
All
today.
right, fantastic. You've got 20 seconds, Deputy Minister.
I think the bottom line is Tafelsig people, as 30 years ago, they still struggle with water issues. I think the issues of the gangs are still real. The issues of the close of schools, of 27 schools, are still real. And therefore, in the spirit of 30 years ago, we will be going to Wells Street on the 30th of this month, and we're calling in the spirit of the UDF every organization to join us.
Okay, thank you so much. And Dr. Molefe, I'm going to take you all right away, given that we gave you so much time at the beginning. Ladies and gentlemen, please a big hand for our guests, Dr. Popo Molefe, Minister of Human Settlements, Connie September, and Marius Fransman, Deputy Minister of International Relations and Cooperation. Thank you very much indeed for sharing your thoughts with us and remembering this day. And for you at home, thank you so much for being part of this conversation.